I can't hold back any longer because Ashley's looking at me and he's saying it's time to get started. I can feel it. I feel it. Totally. And so joining us this morning, a new addition to Car Connection. You've probably heard me talking about him for months because I blow him out over the air every single week. I don't think Ashley knows that, so I'm just telling him that we've been putting you on the air every single week for weeks and waiting for this moment to have you here with us in the Car Connection Command Center to share from your heart to the listeners' ears all about personal injury law. And I have my crayon. You see it right here? You see that crayon? It has a lobster on. So I know that it's my crayon. So joining us this morning, put your hands together and welcome Ashley Gnys, personal injury law, looking after all of you in both Canada and the U.S., we found out this week. But you're going to find out a lot more about Ashley right now. So good morning, Ashley, and thank you for joining us.
Good morning. It's great to be here.
Are you having a good time so far?
It's a great morning.
It's a great morning. Why don't you take the time to tell our listeners about you and a little bit about your law firm as well?
Well, I'm a Niagara boy. I was born in Grimsby, grew up in Beamsville, went to Beamsville District Secondary School, and met my wife in grade 12 over a Bunsen burner. Some people say it was chemistry now, and we've been together 40 years since.
Wow.
So, yeah, I'm a Niagara boy, and I went to law school in Ottawa, started practicing law in Ottawa, and then my wife and I came back down to Niagara Falls in 1983, where we have remained happily ever since. So great to be here. It's a great area to live in. If you got a good job, Niagara's a great place to be.
That is so true. Absolutely true. There's so much going on and a lot of travel, and I'm sure there's a lot of car wrecks going on out there. I see so many happening over and over and over again. In fact, we'll probably have someone on to talk about road rage and how that works as well. So my understanding is that you yourself experienced a car wreck somewhere around 1983. Tell us a bit about that.
Well, you know, it's interesting. After being in Niagara Falls for only a few weeks, my very first personal injury file after coming back down from Ottawa was my own car wreck.
Incredible.
A car wiped me out at an intersection in Niagara Falls, ended up in the hospital, and months later, still suffering significantly from my injuries. And I remember always being someone who has always participated in sports, multiple sports. I hadn't golfed once that season because of the way my neck and back were feeling. And I remember one day thinking, this is crazy. I'm going to go down to St. David's golf course and play 9 holes of golf. And I remember after being on the 8th green, after having not a great round, but at least I was out swinging a club, bending down to pick up my golf ball out of the hole on the number 8 green with tears streaming down my cheeks because I was in so much pain.
Wow.
And I began to wonder now, am I ever going to feel the same way? Am I ever going to get back to the function that I had before, the life I had before? You know, and I was miserable with the people that I loved, taking it out on the people that were closest to me because pain was dominating my life. And, you know, it's no joke when you're involved in an accident, whether it's a car accident or whether it's any other kind of traumatic injury. It's sometimes very, very difficult to bounce back from it. So I went from sort of academically appreciating what personal injury law was about to actually experiencing the journey of getting back to restored health.
Incredible.
And it gives you a different perspective.
Well, you know what it's like, right? From both the client standpoint and also from the legal side.
Well, you know, it's one thing to talk the talk. It's another thing to walk the walk.
Right.
So, unfortunately, I had walked the walk.
Absolutely. I talk about cars, but I can fix them as well and diagnose them. You know, why are the cards, Ashley, so stacked against an accident victim who seeks compensation for their injuries?
You know, the insurance lobby is very, very powerful in Ontario, in Canada, in the United States. It's a great business to be in, and they have the ear of politicians.
Wow.
And we have gone from having one of probably the best set of personal injury laws to protect accident victims 25 years ago in the world to a system now which has very significantly taken away the rights of accident victims, particularly in the area of car accidents, although generally speaking, if you've been involved in an accident, regardless, you've lost significant rights. But it has made the presentation of a claim for a personal injury lawsuit in a car accident particularly problematic because a number of the barriers that have put into place by legislation that various Ontario governments have passed over the last parts of the last 3 decades. So it's a very troubling industry right now. There are a number of hoops that an accident victim has to jump through if they've been in a car accident. You have to prove your injuries meet a certain threshold of severity and permanence. And it can take 1 or 2 years or more sometimes to really know how an accident is going to affect your life. So it's very risky to take on a file if you do this kind of area of law. It's risky if you're an accident victim to present a lawsuit because there's implications if you lose.
Right.
And the value of the case is significantly less than it used to be, which all adds up to more economic risk for the person that is least able to pay for that luxury after all they've lost. Now they have to face increased scrutiny that will strip them of rights that they really should have. But it's all under the guise of keeping insurance premiums down in Ontario at a time of record-breaking industry profits, I would add.
That's a good way of putting it.
So if there's a little bit of tinge of cynicism in my voice, it's probably intended.
Just a hair bit.
Just a bit.
Yeah, it's kind of caught a little bit at that. But it's, when the term stacked against pops out to me because there's so many things that you have to know in order to help the case and to prepare it properly. We're going to talk more about that with Ashley, but now would be a good time for us to give out contacting information, Ashley, for those who are tuned in. We were talking about personal injury law. It may not necessarily be a car accident. It could be the negligence of someone else causing bodily harm, slip, fall down the stairs. We're going to talk more about those details as we continue to unpack what personal injury law looks like through Ashley Gnys and his law firm. Let's give out that information right now. Would you mind doing that, Ashley?
Well, when you've got a name like Gnys that people can't pronounce or spell, and by the way, I commend you for being able to pronounce it correctly. The name is Gnys.
Right.
And if you can remember those guys in Niagara Falls, Guys, just turn that U upside down into an N, and you've got my last name. So when you've got a name like Gnys, you need a really easy phone number now. So it's 905-357 5555.
That is easy.
And we've got a great website, Google Ashley Gnys, Personal Injury Law, and there's a tremendous amount of resources that we have on our website, testimonials of clients that we've served through the years, what your rights are as an accident victim, the various steps that we take. There's a really huge content on our website which people will find very helpful. One thing that's really important to me is that when someone has been involved in an accident, I want them to know what their rights and responsibilities are. If we're going to do something as the law firm representing them, I want people to know why we're going to do it, when we're going to do it, and how we're going to do it, so that you end up going through an education process when you've been involved in a situation like this. So the website is certainly a very useful adjunct to that.
Excellent. And so did you get that phone number? It's 905-357-5555, or you can visit Ashley Gnys Personal Injury Law at carconnectionbusinessnetwork.com, and we've made it even easier for you there. Click on the link below their logo on our homepage, and you can visit their profile page. You'll find a contact box with all the information you need to connect with Ashley Gnys Personal Injury Law. Well, let's keep things rolling this morning. If you're just tuning in, we're glad to have you with us. Get your crayon ready so you can at least take down the contacting information. And we will certainly have Ashley back in studio on a regular basis to give us some tips and ideas on how we can protect our person and get a better understanding of the rules and regulations and how everything plays out. It's not as we unpack some more this morning, you're going to see just how complicated it really, really is. And how could any one of us fully understand this without the help of Ashley Gnys and his team at Ashley Gnys Personal Injury Law. So walk us through, Ashley, what happens when someone calls your office and you actually begin to take a look at the personal injury claim, and you get that claim actually rolling and settled. So walk us through that process that you follow and all the different steps that people are involved in, such as health, as along with the healthcare providers. So there's a whole action process going on. So we'd like you to unpack that for us.
Well, it starts with a telephone call, or it starts with an online submission through our website, where people will want to know what their legal rights are. And there's typically three kinds of calls that will come in, because there's two concepts that are very important. One is liability, which means simply who is at fault.
Right.
And the second is injuries, or the damages that people have suffered. So the individual is either at fault, or he's not at fault, or contributorily at fault, where the liability is split. So we want to know that the accident is not the fault of the person wanting the advice, because if they're at fault, they probably don't have a claim.
Things change.
If liability is good, then it breaks down into two other kinds of calls. You've either got great injuries, when you know that there's going to be a viable claim that can be presented, or the injuries are trivial, and it's probably doesn't have an economic value, so it's not worth proceeding with. You know, someone gets hurt, they're totally better in a month. Hey, it's not worth going through.
Exactly.
But, you know, it's not that easy. The medical process is a complicated thing, because the human body that God's created is very complex. And how people respond to trauma is really varied. And it can take weeks, months, years before you really realize what the long-term, as doctors will say, sequelae will be to the traumatic injury that they've sustained. So that makes it difficult giving advice if you're in my seat, because if someone, for example, has had a car accident and they want to know if they have a claim, because one of the barriers to presenting a claim for a car accident in Ontario is something called threshold, where you've got to prove your injury is serious and permanent, and not just, by the way, serious and not permanent, and not just permanent but not serious. It's got to be serious and permanent. And that this is really a Reader's Digest condensed version of what the legislation says, because it goes on and on and on. It's quite complicated. You have to be able to prove that you've met the threshold of this test laid out in the Insurance Act. And if you don't get any compensation for pain and suffering. And then you run into another barrier, because you can't recover any medical treatment costs. So that's a problem. If you do meet the threshold, there's another barrier you run into, which is called a statutory deductible. And you lose about the first $37,000, $38,000 from your pain and suffering award, unless your injury is to the point where it's worth more than about $126,000. And that's a figure that adjusts each year with inflation. And most injuries aren't worth $126,000. So the bottom line is, you've got this loss of deductible. You've got a threshold that you've got to meet. You don't recover any income recovery for the first week. If you do, you lose 30% of your gross. So there's all of these nibbling away of rights, and you're left at the end with something less than true justice. And that's a car accident. Now, I'd say probably less than half of the files that I'll maintain at any one time are car accidents. Often people will trip on a sidewalk, they'll fall in a parking lot, they'll slip and fall. You know, welcome to Canada, it's winter. Yep. They'll hurt themselves from a product that's manufactured defectively. Someone goes to a restaurant and they walk out with food poisoning and intestinal disorders. There's all sorts of happy ways to get
it sounds like
to be able to come into my office. But the one thing in common that just about everyone has that comes into my office is they are hurt. Right? Their life is at a point of crisis, and they don't know which way to turn. So it's a very interesting community to whom I minister, because their lives are all in crisis. So one of the things that we try to do is we try to qualify the case. Once a case opens, people's lives are under a microscope. We have a huge amount of data that we have to assemble. A lot of it, frankly, is medical. So we have to obtain records, typically going back a number of years before the accident happened, because it's important to know how someone reacts to trauma is often dependent not just on the injury that they've sustained, but what their health was like going into that injury. So, for example, you get into a car accident, you hurt your neck, and you're not recovering. Well, did you ever have trouble with your neck before the accident? Oh yeah, I did, in fact, because I had a car accident 10 years ago, and yeah, my neck was bothering me. Well, how about the year before this accident? Was it bothering you? Oh, no, I haven't had physiotherapy for years, and I got over it. So we'll look at the family doctor's records. Nile, what is this? 3 times in the last year you went and you asked for a neck x-ray. What was that about? That was before this accident. So maybe your neck hadn't quite settled down before this car accident. So we have to find out about all those sorts of things. One of the things that I've come to understand that's really important to the presentation of a personal injury claim is the medical appreciation for physiology, anatomy, and the whole systemic approach to medicine, because there's certain kinds of injuries which have to prompt questions on my end to be able to know what direction their recovery process might be going in. So, for example, if someone has damaged a joint, is it intra-articular? Is that a joint involvement right inside the joint, which will lead to arthritic implications? Someone's had a concussion. Do they have the symptoms that would suggest they have post-concussive syndrome? You know, they got a problem with chewing. Well, do they have a temporomandibular joint dysfunction, etc.? So there's a little bit of nuance in terms of medical to be able to know how to assemble that data, because insurance companies, I learned many years ago, are beasts that feed on paper. So everything's got to be documented. And that's why timing's really important. Yeah. Did you see your doctor in a timely way? Did you seek medical intervention in a timely way? What did they say about your ability to go back to work? Did they prescribe that physical therapy? So these are the kinds of things that we have to marshal fairly quickly in a case to make sure that the case is documented properly, so that people do what lawyers will refer to as mitigating their damages. In other words, trying to get better, trying to get on with life. There's a legal obligation to do so. So all of that intervention and that timing is critical to the process. And everyone's different. Everyone's personality is different. Their communication style is different. Their pre-morbid health is different. How people respond to trauma. You know, a lot of people we meet in life are already standing emotionally on one leg. It's not very hard to push them over. Right. Some people are very solidly standing on 2 legs, and they've got great mental health. But one of the principles in law is you take a victim the way you find them. And if they're frail emotionally, that's not their fault. They're just frail emotionally. They don't respond well to trauma. So is the person really genuinely reacting to this trauma? Are they malingering? Are they exaggerating? So we have to sort out a lot of calls. And I'd say, you know, maybe every 20 calls we get in, we maybe only take 3 files.
Wow.
So 17 don't get to meet me, except maybe on the phone or on the internet.
That's a tough ratio, Ashley.
It's a tough business.
I can understand that. My goodness. I thought diagnosing cars was difficult.
Well, you know, in real estate, they say the 3 most important things for a listing is location, location, and location. Right. In personal injury law, it's detail, detail, detail.
Right. So the only thing I got out of that entire conversation is there's one common denominator. Hurt. That's it.
Hurt.
The rest.
Ouch.
Yeah.
Trauma. Crisis.
The whole package.
Your life is just spinning out of control.
You got to unravel all that and put it in the right order in order to qualify whether you can move forward.
And, you know, even you have to take the complex and try to present it in a simple fashion that people can emotionally identify with. So that as we present our cases to insurance companies that we're trying to negotiate a settlement one day, we're presenting that individual as a unique person, because everyone responds differently. And we want to give the insurance company a psychological investment in the file by getting to know my client.
Right.
Getting to know them, because everyone's worthy of respect. And sometimes with an insurance company, and I can understand this, I get it, it's just a number, it's just business.
Right.
It's just another file, and the adjuster's got 250 files, and this is just one of them. Well, no, I want you to understand, if I'm representing Nile, that he's not like those other 249 files. But it means I got to get to know my client really well. And, you know, because an average personal injury claim might take 4 years or more to settle, I get to know my clients really, really well. And they end up telling me stuff that they probably aren't telling anyone else in their life, partially because of some of the questions I ask. Because, you know, the physical part of the injury is a lot easier to be able to demonstrate. You can look at an x-ray, you can look at an ultrasound, but the psychological, the emotional, the spiritual journey that people go on is much more complex. just like the Titanic running into an iceberg on the cold northern Atlantic many years ago. 90% of that ice is below the surface of the water. And when we've been involved in trauma, the stuff that's behind the water, below the water, is often the psychological, something that you can't see, because pain becomes all-consuming, and it leads to clinical depression, and that depression leads to pain, and you get into this downward spiral. So it's really important to be able to tease that out, and it's much more difficult to be able to document that aspect of it. So we really have to get to know our client well to be able to do that. It's
an incredible amount of material that you got to pull it out and then put it in the right order.
And you know what? I've been doing this since 1979, and all of that detail drives me crazy.
Yeah, I would say, do you ever get used to it?
You never get used to it.
There you go.
In fact, one of my biggest panics if one of my staff go on vacation is me trying to find something because it's all paper. And now it's not just paper, it's electronic. There's just so much material to stay on top of.
Well, if you're just joining us, we have Ashley Gnys, personal injury law, with us today, serving all of you, our Car Connection listeners, in both the Niagara region. And do you reach into cases in the Greater Toronto area, GTA?
Yeah. Do you know what, because we live in Niagara Falls and we have 14 million tourists coming to Niagara Falls every year, a certain proportion of which get hurt when they come. We have clients that we represent really all around North America. We have quite a few clients, for example, in New York State, Ohio, Pennsylvania, because they'll come here.
Wow.
I just had a case settled this past week of a lady that lives in Buffalo. We also work for other lawyers who do court cases, but maybe don't have a particular expertise in personal injury, and we act as co-counsel for other law firms across North America in helping them, coming alongside them and presenting their claims. So we also indirectly have clients through many other law firms that participate with us. So yeah, it's, and you know, with technology, with internet, with Skype, it's not the disadvantage that it might have been 20 years ago if your client's 500 miles away.
Right. Now would be a great opportunity for those who are just joining us and wonder, I need to talk to that guy. How would they get in touch with you, Ashley?
Well, the easiest way is to pick up the phone and give us a call at 905-357-5555, or Google the name or put it in your search engine, Ashley Gnys, Personal Injury Law. Go to our website. You can submit something online, but find out what your rights are. Go to our website, see what you need to know. But there's no financial obligation to that first contact. Okay. Most people probably call us. We'll spend a few minutes with you, and if you don't have a case, you're not going to get a bill, so there's no lose.
Right, so it's just a matter of picking up that phone that doesn't weigh 600 pounds and make that initial contact at 905-357-5555, or visit Ashley Gnys, Personal Injury Law, at carconnectionbusinessnetwork.com. They're right on our home page, so when you find the logo, click on the link below. That'll take you through to the profile page and all the contacting information, and so that you can learn more about Ashley Gnys, Personal Injury Law, from Car Connection. So it's a great way for you to share with family and friends as well. So if you know someone who knows someone who knows someone, get this contacting information to them so that you can connect. Well, what single most important skill, Ashley, is necessary to practice personal injury law?
The answer I'm going to give is probably similar to how can you negotiate through life successfully. What are we going to teach our kids?
Right.
You've got to learn to manage risk, because what we do involves a huge amount of risk. Typically, when we have a client sign a retainer agreement hiring us, it's on what's called a contingency basis, which means you win, client, we win, lawyer, you lose, client, we lose, lawyer. We're joined at the hip, because we generally will take a percentage of the settlement that we achieve. And if there's no settlement, guess what? Whatever percentage it is times zero is still zero. So we've got to make sure we qualify the case well. And we've got to do that for our client as well, because there's financial risk for them also.
Yes.
Because if they fail in their lawsuit, they could be dinged with legal costs of the defense of the insurance company that we're dealing with. So managing risk is extraordinarily important, but it's true in life, isn't it?
Yes.
But it's particularly important in personal injury law. If you come into my office, you'll see hanging a print over where I sit, and it's a picture of my dad, who was a fighter pilot in the Polish Air Force, and then with the French, and then with the RAF in Britain, shooting down the first 2 German aircraft of World War II, September 1st, 1939. And if my dad as a fighter pilot didn't manage risk well, guess what? I wouldn't be sitting here this morning.
We'd have an empty microphone
You got
over
it.
there.
That's right. So that's really
That's
important.
risk. Yeah.
But it's just general advice in life.
Are there ministry opportunities for a Christian who practices personal injury law?
You know, it's interesting. When I had a particular encounter with God when I was a young man, and I asked, God, what do you want me to do with my life? And the answer was full-time ministry, but I didn't realize it would be full-time ministry in law.
Very interesting.
It sounded a bit like an oxymoron. But then it took me years to really understand what it was like to practice law, not just as a lawyer who's a Christian, but as a Christian lawyer, where your worldview does very much influence the decisions you make. Now, don't get me wrong. If someone has a choice between hiring a personal injury lawyer who's excellent and is not a believer, or someone who's a Christian, but they're very mediocre at what they do, hire the guy that's excellent. You need competence. You need excellence.
You need competence. Yeah.
But hopefully you get both in our office, because what I've come to learn is that people who are involved in accidents, people who have trauma, are at a point of crisis in their life. And a crisis is neither good nor bad. It's just simply a turning point. You're going down the road, you can take exit 5 to get off on the street you're exiting on, or go straight. And when you're at that juncture of having to make that decision, that's a crisis. When people come into my office, they're in a point of crisis. And what I've learned is this: anyone who's in a crisis has one of 2 responses in their position before God. They either move closer toward God, or they move further away. They don't remain in the same position they're in before that traumatic event. And from time to time, God will give us a privilege to incline them toward Him as He brings order back into a life which is spun hopelessly out of control. And it's a very satisfying thing to make a difference in people's lives. So I'm humbled and I'm thankful for the opportunity that He gives me to be at a point of need for people when they don't know where to turn.
Wow. We have a lot more material to cover, so I'm definitely going to have you back to join us again. But let's wrap up with this. Why is it so important that someone who has a personal injury contact your office immediately? What should they know right now? And then if you could give out your contacting information again, Ashley. But definitely there's so much material, folks, to cover here. But we'll make sure that you're well educated, having Ashley Gnys part of our Car Connection for you to be able to get in touch with them 24/7 through our website at carconnectionbusinessnetwork.com. So if you could address that would be fantastic.
Timing is really important. So you're involved in an accident, what do you do? Well, one of the things that you should do, frankly, is take photographs. A picture's worth 1,000 words. Someone falls in a parking lot, and they're telling me afterwards that there was a difference in the surface drop-off. Well, how much of a difference? Can you show me a picture? Or say there was an independent witness. Yes, someone saw me fall. Well, what's the name of this lady that saw you fall? Well, I didn't get her name.
Beautiful.
So you got to know these things. Keep a diary. You go to see a doctor. You receive some physical therapy. You are off of work, or you're experiencing difficulty at work. Write it down in a pain diary, because you're not going to remember later on. See your doctor quickly. Get medical attention. Make sure that injury is documented quickly so that you can prove that you were hurt. Go down to emergency of your local hospital, etc. Because days, weeks, months from now, you're not going to remember some of these details. And it's one thing to say, I was really hurt. Well, did you seek medical attention? Well, no. Well,
Not
how
good.
really badly hurt could you have been if you didn't go down to the hospital to have your injuries checked out? So that sort of thing is, and once that opportunity is passed, it's passed. And it can make very difficult for me to present an effective claim when someone is complaining of significant functional loss, but they can't demonstrate it because they didn't take appropriate attention. So timing is really important. And if you don't do the right kinds of things, that within a certain period of time, you might lose your right to sue altogether. There are things that we call limitation dates, where if you don't issue a statement of claim, the court process within a certain period of time, or you don't notify, for example, your municipality that you fell on their sidewalk within a certain amount of days, well, guess what? You have probably no claim. And it becomes very, very difficult. There's so many cases that I've heard about over the years where they had significant injury, significant loss, but they didn't act quickly enough, and they have no right to be able to sue now.
Wow. So there's a lot to think about from that point of injury, that point where the person has slipped, fallen, or someone has, through negligence, has caused personal injury. Could there also be mental injury as well along with that?
Well, there's certainly mental injury
That's
on my
a whole
part
new
when I find
ballgame,
out that
isn't
I
it?
can't sue later on because they didn't call me in time.
Yeah.
It's mentally injurious to the person taking the call on my end.
Right.
But, you know, we're complex individuals, body, soul, spirit.
Right.
And, you know, there's the physical injury, there's the psychological impact, the emotional impact, there's the spiritual journey that you are affected. You know, one leads to the other. It's a complex individual in each one of us that gets hurt. And the way we respond to trauma is all very different. Some people can respond to it in a very healthy way. Some people have a very difficult time getting back because they were frail to begin with. It's like having a bad neck and you now get a whiplash in a car accident. Well, guess what? Why is your neck bothering you so much? Because your neck was weak to begin with. You know, you're vulnerable. You're more susceptible to re-injury. But everyone's different. And that's why we have to get to know our clients so extremely well.
Right. So now would be another good time for us to give out contacting information. So you've been listening to Ashley Gnys, personal injury law in the Niagara region, throughout Toronto, the GTA, and into Buffalo as well. So if you or someone you know has been injured due to the negligence of others, it would be worthwhile to get in touch with Ashley and his team. So how are they going to do that?
Well, when you got a name like Gnys that people can't spell or pronounce, G-N-Y-S,
Yes.
4 letters.
I practiced.
You know, it looks like there's no vowel. You turn that U upside down into an N. So remember those guys in Niagara Falls that practice personal injury law, G-U-Y-S. Turn that U upside down into an N. But when you've got a name like Gnys, you need an easy phone number. So it's easy, 905-357-5555.
That works.
Or you can look us up on the website, put it in your favorite internet search engine, personal injury law, Gnys, Niagara Falls. You know, it'll direct you to our website. A tremendous amount of information on our website to help you understand what your rights and responsibilities are. So the internet's a great thing.
Phenomenal having you with us, Ashley, and I would certainly extend the invitation for you to come back and join us again so we can cover some more information, because this is huge. There's a lot to think about, and I think most, once they've experienced an injury, that's when the questions start.
So, Nile, is this your encouragement to your listening audience to have their accent between now and the next time I'm back so that they're ready?
So if you're going to do it, now would
try
be
to
the
schedule
time.
that accent in the next few months.
Exactly. So thank
word.
you very much, Ashley, for joining us. You can also visit Ashley Gnys Personal Injury Law Firm, available to you 24/7 at carconnectionbusinessnetwork.com.